Have you ever bent over backwards for a woman, giving her everything she wanted, only to watch her interest fade away like morning mist? Have you sacrificed your time, energy, and self-respect to please her, thinking this would make her love you more, only to find yourself discarded like yesterday's newspaper? You're not alone, and it's not your fault. What if I told you that your excessive kindness, the very thing you thought would win her heart, is precisely what's killing her attraction for you? What if the good guy approach you've been taught your entire life is actually a carefully designed trap that ensures you'll never truly be respected by the women you desire? Today, you're going to understand the dark truth that no one else will tell you. In the silent game of female psychology, men who seek acceptance and love through emotional submission end up losing the only resource that truly matters: respect. And without respect, there can be no genuine desire, no real connection, and certainly no control over your relationships. This isn't about becoming manipulative. This is about understanding the Machiavellian principles that govern all human interactions, principles that women instinctively understand and use, while you've been kept in the dark. By the end of this video, you'll finally see why seduction and influence aren't born from unconditional surrender, but from strategically controlled emotional scarcity. You've probably heard the phrase, "nice guys finish last," so many times that it's lost all meaning. But have you ever stopped to consider why this cliché persists? It's not just empty words. It's the surface-level expression of a profound psychological truth that Machiavelli understood centuries ago. When you show excessive kindness to a woman, always available, always understanding, always saying yes, you're communicating something dangerous: predictability, and a complete absence of power. Think about it. What happens when something becomes too available? Its value plummets. This is basic economics, and it applies to your emotional presence just as much as it does to any commodity. You see, female psychology values what requires emotional effort. When you give yourself without criteria, without boundaries, you become predictable, dispensable, and easily manipulated. Women quickly realize they can dominate the dynamic, controlling the pace of attention, concessions, and affection. And once they've gained this control, their respect for you begins to evaporate like water in the desert sun. Don't believe me? Think back to your own experiences. Remember that woman you couldn't stop thinking about. The one who sometimes showed interest, sometimes pulled away, the one who kept you guessing. Compare that to how you felt about someone who was completely obsessed with you, someone who would drop everything at your slightest whim. Which one commanded more of your attention? Which one did you respect more? This isn't coincidence. It's hardwired into our psychology. The 3 pillars of female Machiavellian strategy. Women, whether consciously or unconsciously, employ 3 primary strategies to test and map your emotional structure. Understanding these strategies is the first step toward reclaiming your power. 1. Intermittent reinforcement. Have you noticed how the women who keep you most engaged are the ones who alternate between warmth and coldness? One day she's texting you constantly, laughing at your jokes, touching your arm. The next day, she's distant, takes hours to respond, seems unimpressed by your efforts. This isn't random behavior. It's a powerful psychological technique called intermittent reinforcement. When rewards come unpredictably, they create a much stronger response than consistent rewards. It's the same principle that makes gambling so addictive. You never know when you'll hit the jackpot, so you keep playing, keep investing, keep hoping. By alternating affection and coldness, she keeps you emotionally unstable and, ultimately, submissive. You become like a lab rat pressing a lever, never knowing when the food pellet will come, but pressing desperately nonetheless. The more inconsistent her affection, the harder you'll work for it. And here's the cruel irony. The harder you work for her affection, the less she respects you for it. 2. Boundary testing. Have you ever had a woman make a slightly disrespectful comment toward you, and you let it slide because you didn't want to seem too sensitive or risk upsetting her? Perhaps she canceled plans at the last minute, or spoke to you in a tone she would never use with her boss or her father. Maybe she compared you unfavorably to another man, or questioned your decisions in front of others. These aren't just minor annoyances. They're calculated tests to see how much disrespect you'll tolerate. Every time you accept disrespect without establishing a boundary, you communicate that you value her approval more than your self-respect. And nothing kills attraction faster than a man who doesn't value himself. Think about it from a Machiavellian perspective. Would you respect someone who allows you to walk all over them? Of course not. You might exploit them, you might use them, but you would never truly respect them. And without respect, there can be no genuine desire. 3. Withholding emotional and sexual validation. The most powerful control mechanism in a woman's arsenal is the strategic withholding of emotional and sexual validation. By conditioning affection or intimacy on emotional obedience, she creates a system where you become a servant to her approval. Have you noticed how some women seem to become mysteriously not in the mood right after you've done something to assert yourself? Or how physical affection becomes abundant when you've recently provided some material benefit or emotional labor? This isn't coincidence, it's conditioning. By linking her affection to your compliance, she trains you like Pavlov trained his dogs. Soon, you're unconsciously modifying your behavior to earn her approval, sacrificing your authenticity in the process. You become a performer in your own relationship, constantly adjusting your act to please an increasingly critical audience. The most dangerous aspect of this dynamic is how silently it occurs. There's no dramatic moment where you hand over your power. Instead, it happens through 1,000 tiny concessions, each seemingly insignificant on its own. You cancel plans with your friends because she had a bad day and needs you. You apologize for something that wasn't your fault because it's easier than arguing. You suppress your opinions when they differ from hers to keep the peace. You work harder and harder for less and less affection, thinking if you just try a little more, give a little more, sacrifice a little more, she'll finally treat you the way she did at the beginning. But she won't. Because her treatment of you in the beginning was the investment phase, the period where she showed you what was possible to hook you into the relationship. Once she's confident she has you, the investment stops and the extraction begins. This is why so many men find themselves in relationships where they're doing all the giving and receiving little in return. They've been caught in a Machiavellian web, entrapped by their own desire to please. Now we arrive at the most critical point in this psychological pattern, the moment where everything comes crashing down. It happens when you, believing that more kindness will resolve her distance or coldness, intensify your efforts. You become even more available, even more understanding, even more accommodating. And it's precisely at this moment that she completely devalues you. This is the cruel paradox at the heart of relationship dynamics. When you chase hardest, she runs fastest. When you need her most, she needs you least. When you show the greatest kindness, you receive the greatest contempt. Imagine this scenario. You've noticed she's becoming more distant. Her texts are shorter, less frequent. She cancels plans more often. She seems irritated by things that never bothered her before. The natural male response: try harder, be nicer, show her how much you care. So you start doing more. You send thoughtful gifts. You write heartfelt messages. You offer to help with her problems. You become available 24/7. You walk on eggshells to avoid upsetting her further. You become the perfect boyfriend, the kind they write about in romance novels. And what happens? She pulls away even more dramatically. The more you give, the less she wants. The more you show you care, the more contempt she seems to feel. It's as if your kindness itself has become repulsive to her. This is the moment of complete devaluation. In her eyes, you've transformed from a potential equal, a man worthy of respect and desire, into a supplicant begging for scraps of affection. You've revealed your hand completely, showing that you need her far more than she needs you. And in that revelation, all mystery, all challenge, all respect vanishes. Think of it like a negotiation. The person who cares least about the outcome always has the most power. By showing that you care desperately, that you'll do anything to keep her, you've surrendered all your leverage. You've communicated that there is no price you won't pay, no concession you won't make, no boundary you won't cross. And paradoxically, This absolute surrender doesn't inspire gratitude or reciprocal affection. Instead, it triggers an almost primal revulsion. Because deep in the female psyche, a man who places no value on himself cannot be valuable to her. This devaluation manifests in specific observable ways. She becomes irritated by your presence. The very sight of you waiting for her approval seems to trigger annoyance. She begins to speak about you differently to friends and family, focusing on your flaws and weaknesses rather than your strengths. She compares you unfavorably to other men, perhaps ex-boyfriends, male friends, or even fictional characters who embody the strength you've surrendered. She tests your boundaries more aggressively, almost as if she's hoping you'll finally stand up for yourself. She loses sexual interest. Physical intimacy becomes a chore for her, something she engages in out of obligation rather than desire. And most tellingly, she begins to treat you with the particular kind of casual cruelty reserved for those we no longer respect. Small humiliations, public corrections, dismissive gestures, the kind of behavior that would be unthinkable towards someone she valued. The tragedy is that most men respond to these signs by doubling down on the very behavior that caused the problem in the first place. They think, if being nice didn't work, I'll be even nicer. If giving gifts didn't work, I'll give bigger gifts. If being available didn't work, I'll never leave her side. And so begins the death spiral of the relationship. Each attempt to recapture her interest through increased kindness pushes her further away, which in turn provokes even more desperate attempts to please, creating a vicious cycle that can only end in complete rejection. This pattern isn't unique to you. It's not a reflection of your worth as a man. It's a fundamental dynamic that plays out in millions of relationships every day. The specifics may vary, but the underlying psychological mechanism remains the same. And here's the most important thing to understand. This devaluation isn't happening because you're inherently unworthy. It's happening because you've inadvertently triggered a specific response through behavior that contradicts what women instinctively respond to. You've been playing the game with the wrong rulebook, wondering why you keep losing. Machiavelli teaches us that it is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. In the emotional context of relationships, this doesn't mean becoming abusive or cruel. It means understanding that respect is the foundation of all meaningful connections, and respect cannot exist without boundaries. The prince who rules by love alone will find his subjects quick to abandon him when times are difficult. But the prince who has established himself as someone to be respected, someone who cannot be taken advantage of without consequences, will find his position secure even in challenging times. So what does this mean for you? How do you transform from the devalued nice guy into the respected, desired partner? The answer lies in embracing what Machiavelli understood centuries ago. Power doesn't come from giving away everything you have. It comes from strategic scarcity, from calculated assertiveness, from the courage to risk disapproval for the sake of self-respect. Here are the specific principles you must adopt if you want to break the cycle of devaluation. First, recognize that your time and attention are valuable resources. When you make yourself endlessly available, you communicate that your time has no value. Start treating your presence as something to be earned, not given away freely. This doesn't mean playing childish games or manipulating through absence. It means having a life of genuine purpose outside of her approval, interests, goals, and relationships that don't revolve around her validation. Second, establish clear boundaries and defend them relentlessly. The moment a boundary is crossed without consequence is the moment respect begins to erode. When she tests you, and she will test you, respond not with anger or wounded feelings, but with calm certainty. "I don't accept that kind of treatment," is more powerful than any elaborate justification or emotional plea. Third, cultivate an element of unpredictability. The human mind is drawn to patterns it can't quite solve, mysteries it can't fully unravel. When your reactions become completely predictable, the game loses its intrigue. This doesn't mean becoming erratic or unreliable. It means maintaining an inner world that isn't entirely accessible to her, thoughts, plans, and aspects of your character that she must continually work to discover. Fourth, embrace the power of no. The ability to refuse, to set limits on what you will give, accept, or tolerate, is perhaps the most powerful tool you possess in any relationship. Many men fear that saying no will cost them the relationship. But a relationship that can't survive your reasonable boundaries was never sustainable in the first place. Fifth, invest in yourself first. The most attractive quality in a man isn't his willingness to sacrifice for a woman. It's his commitment to his own growth, purpose, and excellence. When you prioritize your development, physically, mentally, financially, socially, you become inherently more valuable. And value, unlike niceness, is something that can't be faked or manufactured through effort alone. Finally, understand that true kindness comes from strength, not weakness. There's nothing wrong with being generous, thoughtful, or supportive, when these qualities flow from a position of self-respect rather than need. Kindness offered from a place of abundance is attractive. Kindness offered as a plea for approval is repulsive. The fundamental shift you must make is from a mindset of earning love through servitude to commanding respect through self-valuation. When you value yourself highly, when you treat your time, attention, and affection as precious resources rather than desperate offerings, others naturally follow suit. This transformation won't happen overnight. The patterns you've established, both in your behavior and in her expectations, have deep roots. There will be resistance. She may escalate her tests, intensify her disapproval, or threaten the relationship itself when she senses the power dynamic shifting. This is normal and expected, the final surge of a failing strategy. Your job is to hold firm, to recognize these reactions not as evidence that your new approach is failing, but as confirmation that it's working. The old dynamic is being challenged, and like any system under threat, it will fight to maintain itself before adapting to the new reality. Remember, women don't want men they can control completely. What they want, what they respond to on the deepest level, are men who control themselves, men who have inner strength that can't be manipulated, compromised, or purchased with affection. Men who offer kindness as a choice rather than a strategy. The ultimate Machiavellian lesson isn't about becoming cold or manipulative. It's about understanding that in all human relationships, respect precedes love, that boundaries create attraction, that self-valuation is the foundation of all genuine connection. Now you understand why excessive kindness doesn't earn respect. You see the hidden dynamics that have been working against you. You recognize the Machiavellian strategies that have kept you trapped in a cycle of giving more and receiving less. The path forward isn't easy, but it is clear. Stop seeking her approval and start seeking your own. Stop trying to earn love through sacrifice and start commanding respect through self-worth. Stop being available for everything and start being valuable for something. Will there be risks? Of course. Some relationships won't survive this transformation. Some women will prefer the old you, the malleable, accommodating, predictable you, to the man of strength and boundaries you're becoming. But these aren't the relationships that would fulfill you anyway. These aren't the connections that would stand the test of time. What awaits you on the other side of this transformation is something far more valuable than the fragile approval you've been chasing. It's relationships based on mutual respect rather than power imbalance. It's desire born of genuine attraction rather than obligation. It's the freedom to be authentic rather than strategic. The question now is, are you ready to make this change? Are you willing to risk temporary disapproval for lasting respect? Are you brave enough to value yourself as highly as you valued her? If this video has opened your eyes to dynamics you've experienced but couldn't explain, hit the like button right now. Share your stories in the comments. I want to hear about times you recognized these patterns in your own relationships and how you responded. Subscribe to this channel for more hidden truths that nobody else dares to tell you. And be sure to check out our previous videos on female psychology. Each one reveals another layer of the game you've been playing without knowing the rules. Remember, Machiavelli wasn't teaching men how to be cruel. He was teaching them how to be effective. And in the realm of relationships, nothing is more effective than a man who refuses to be devalued. The game never stops. But now, at least, you know how to win.